So let's recap. A paragraph consists of 4 parts. First, M, the main point, which will be expressed through a topic sentence that communicates the big idea of that paragraph. Second, E, the evidence that proves that main point. Third, A, analysis. This is where we are going to see how the evidence proves the point. You're going to go into additional insights and ideas and explanations that show the proof. And then finally, there is L, the link or the linking sentence, which is put at the end of a paragraph to kind of tie up loose ends in one of 3 ways, either through a summarizing link, a setup link, or a section/thesis link. Now, hopefully you can see how these 4 parts together are going to create strong paragraphs. Paragraphs that can effectively communicate your point and argue the things that you want to argue in your paper. But let's be real for a second. If all you're doing is following this structure to the letter, it's going to come across as a little bit wooden and unfocused. In order to create really strong paragraphs, then, we need to find a way to create a flow within our paragraphs. We need to have some sort of cohesion. And that's what this video is all about. Building flow between paragraphs. And we're going to look at 3 different ways that you can do that effectively when you're writing. First, you can remember your outline. Now, we haven't talked a lot about outlining in this series because that's not really what this series is about, but there is value to outlining. I will always say that. Outlining is essentially where you plan out your paper in advance, where you take your research and you plug it in to make it make sense. And typically when we talk about outlining, we think of it in terms of like, here's your thesis, and here are the different sections that back that up. But you can also put paragraphing into your outlines. If you know that one of your sections is going to have 2 main points to prove it, that means that you need 2 paragraphs to prove whatever that section is about. So plan your paragraphs accordingly. Plan to talk about those 2 points and keep them consistent as you're writing with those 2 points. Now, of course, as you write, sometimes your ideas shift a little bit, and if you need to add a 3rd paragraph or something like that, that's okay. But remember your outline as you write so that you don't feel like you're going way off course talking about a whole bunch of ideas in a whole bunch of paragraphs that you don't really need. Second, transition words. Transition words are incredibly simple but effective ways of building cohesion within your paragraphs. They act kind of like signposts, guiding your reader from one sentence or one idea to the next. And there's all kinds of them out there. So here's just a small list. We have transition words of addition, things like also or furthermore or moreover. We have words of transition words of consequence, therefore, as such, thus. Illustration, for example, or for instance. Transition words of restatement, in other words, or namely. There are words of contrast, however, yet, nevertheless, and also of comparison, likewise, similarly, on the other hand. Now, this is not an exhaustive list. We actually have an entire tip sheet devoted to transition words that gives a lot more than these ones, and each of these little categories even have more, and there are more categories. So don't get caught up on this individual list. What matters is that there are these words that are going to help guide your reader from one idea to the next effectively. So let's look at an example. Now, here's a paragraph. I'm not going to read it now. I'll read it after our little pause here. But what I want you to do now is pause the video and take a look at those yellow underlined words and try and come up with what each of them is doing to guide your reader from the previous sentence into the next sentence. So pause the video and then we'll go through it together. Okay. So I'm just going to kind of read through the paragraph, and as we come to transitions, we'll talk about them. So, the map-making industry has also been hit hard by the development of smart technologies. That also means that it is the second, at least, of a few different ways that the map-making industry has been hit hard. So it's telling us that there was a previous idea in a previous paragraph that also is about how it's hit hard. So we know that this is number 2. This is a great way of creating lists of ideas when you're creating paragraphs. It used to be that when going on a drive or taking a vacation, a wise traveler would bring a map. Today, however, we're just going to pause there. That, however, is setting up a difference between what was, what we used to do, and what we do now, what we do today. That's what however does. It creates a contrast between what was in the previous sentence and in the next sentence. So, today, however, GPS devices are built into cars and cell phones. People no longer have to use surrounding street signs to locate themselves on a map. Instead, Just like, however, a comparison between what was in the last sentence and this sentence, instead, we have apps that immediately show us where we are. Moreover was one of those addition words. And what this is saying is we're going to give an additional insight, an additional piece of evidence that backs up the point we're trying to make. Moreover, these apps use data from other cars and smartphones to identify the quickest route to your destination. For example, now we're going to show an illustration, a very specific piece of evidence. Not sure how to get downtown? Today's map apps will show you precisely how to drive, walk, or take public transit to get there. Therefore, as a consequence, this is our final transition word, if traditional map companies wish to survive today, they will need to offer incentives that smart maps do not. Do you see how these transition words are building connections, building bridges from one idea to the next so that we have a much stronger idea of what this paragraph is trying to express? They are signposts. They are guiding you along the way so that you can better understand the paragraph. And finally, we have repetition. Repetition is another great way to build cohesion within and between paragraphs because repetition creates a mental link. It tells us when we say the same word or read the same word over and over again that that word is important, and it helps us to see how the ideas fit together. So let's look again at that map paragraph, and this time we're going to look at the times where the word map is repeated. Do you see it? We've got, once again, lots of yellow and lots of underlines. 6 different times. The map-making industry. A wise traveler would bring a map, locate themselves on a map. Today's map apps, therefore of traditional map companies, smart maps, we are constantly repeating this word map so that as a reader, we know what this paragraph is about. We are constantly being reminded that maps is the key here. But there's more to it than just that. Look at their other repetitions that we have here. We have things about smart technologies, smartphones, smart maps. Again, not as frequent, but that repetition of smart is telling us what we're comparing it to. And in the same way, we have 3 uses of the word apps. Again, another thing that we're comparing maps to. But it is showing us by these repeated uses of the word that they are very important ideas that we want to be wrestling with as we read this paragraph. But it's not just within paragraphs that we want to create repetition. We also want repetition between paragraphs. Now, look at that last sentence for a minute. When you read that last sentence, therefore, if traditional map companies wish to survive today, they will need to offer incentives that smart maps do not. Which kind of linking sentence is that? Is it a summarizing link, a setup link, or a section or thesis link? So if you guessed setup link, I would say you're the most correct. This sentence is linking to something in the next sentence in some way. And now we're not going to go into an entire second paragraph, but this is a way that you can see what it looks like. Therefore, if traditional map companies wish to survive today, they will need to offer incentives that smart maps do not. One of those incentives could be, and then you go into more detail. But do you see how repeating a word from the linking sentence in the previous paragraph in the topic sentence of the next paragraph helps create a mental link? How it helps prepare your reader not only for what's to come, but to build an automatic connection between those two ideas? This is how you use repetition effectively. And if you use all of these strategies, remembering your outline, transition words, and repetition, it is going to help you, as you write, create cohesion within those papers. So that's paragraphs. I know that paragraphs can seem small and like it's not really that important to follow a particular structure. But when you keep them an appropriate length, when you cover things like main points and evidence and analysis and linking sentences, and when you build cohesion between your paragraphs, it's going to make your entire paper as a whole stronger. As always, if this is something you want more help with, you can always book an appointment with us at Writing and Tutoring Services. Simply log into classes.tyndale.ca and click the Appointments button in the Writing and Tutoring box on the right side of the page, and you can get set up with us, and we can talk to you about anything about paragraphs, about main points and linking sentences, about evidence and what's a good length, and how do you make them effectively connect with each other. But that's all I have for you today. I hope you found this helpful, and I hope that you now feel better prepared to write your paragraphs to the best of your ability. All the best, and happy writing.